Hello, fourth graders. We miss you so much. I hope you're staying safe and you're helping your families out as much as you can at home. We are going to begin our math lessons. You are going to be expected to do School City this week and turn that into us. The lessons I'm going to be teaching from is from a different document. We're going to be focusing on fractions and decimals this week. The first one is comparing fractions that have not common denominators and how you can do that by looking at a diagram. So we have a story problem that's involving 3/6 and 2/3. What they did was they took for Sarah's the amount of time she read and they divided it up into 6 equal parts because that's the denominator, and then they colored in 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3. They took the second fraction, which is 2/3, divided that one up into 3 sections, and colored in 2, 1, 2. Now, when you look at this, which one has more shading? Clearly, Connor read more, so the 2/3 is going to have the inequality sign facing towards it. They showed another way to do it by using a tape diagram or a bar graph or a bargram. And again, you have 2/8, and they took the bar and divided it into 8 pieces and colored in 2. Over here, they took same thing, a bar graph, the same length as the one over here, but instead divided it up into 4 pieces and colored in 3. Again, which one has more coloring? This one over here, so your inequality sign is going to face this direction. What I did was I went ahead and took these math problems and put them in a graph sheet for you to where you could have extra practice if you wish. I'm only going to show you the first one because of time. We have 1/4 and 8/10, which is right here. Again, I went ahead and already sectioned it off for you. Notice how my graph, my diagram is the same length in both situations. I'm going to take the 1/4 and I'm going to color in just this 1/4 area. Then after I color in that 1/4 area, I'm going to go to this next one and I'm going to color in 8/10. Now, because of this wonderful little marker thing, it's not the cleanest, so you're just going to have to bear with me. Okay, but we have 8/10 right here. This coloring was not good, so I'm going to color in this a little bit more. Okay. This for the eraser. Okay, now looking at this, which one did I color more of? The 8/10, so my inequality sign would face this direction. Now, something I didn't touch on is if the numerator is really close to the denominator, most likely that's closer to 1. And so that fraction is going to be larger than a numerator that's not so close to the denominator. So 8/10 is definitely larger. What am I talking about? If I go to number 5, again, 8 is closer to 12 than 2 is to 8. So I know 8/12 is larger than 2/8. And if I were to go down below and actually color it in, it would come up with the same answer. Okay, now I'm going to quickly move on to the next part of comparing fractions. With this one, you are figuring out common denominators, and you have to skip count. So you have 3/8. What they did was they took this 8 and put it right here, and they skip counted by 8. And then they took the 1/4, took that fourth, which is the denominator, and skip counted by 4. And then 1/2, again, took the 2, skip counted by 2. Now, in this situation, I don't know what Mrs. Shobe or Mrs. McClellan has told you, but in our class, I required my students to do it within 5 sections because I wanted them to practice skip counting. So I am going to ask of all of you that you do it up to 5. So for an example with this 2, it would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, because they had to skip count all the way up 5 digits. Okay? Once you figure out your common denominator, that's what you're going to use to compare and change your fractions to where they all have common denominators. So now you're comparing 3/8, 2/8, and 4/8. Which number is the smallest? It's the 2 in the numerator. The second smallest is the 3, and then the 4. So that's where the 2, 3, 4 came from here. And then they listed it in fractions right here. Now, this is where it kind of gets a little catchy. Do you see this 2/8 right here? Well, when they figured out the 2/8 here, what is it actually representing? It's representing the 1/4, right? That's how they got the 1/4 right here. It's the same fraction. 2/8 and 1/4 are the same thing, just written in a different way. Okay, so let's go through and practice this. I am going to, again, I did the same thing where I rewrote everything so you have workspace if you want to rework all of these problems. What I'm going to do is take the first problem and I'm going to pretend that these fractions are exactly the same as down here and they're asking me to do two different things because of time. The first section up here is they want you to list which one of the three fractions have the greatest value. So when I look at 2/3, 1/4, and 1/6, which one is larger? Again, you cannot compare fractions that have different denominators. You have to come up with a fraction with common denominators. So you have to skip count. You have to be able to turn it into numbers that are definitely more legible. So you are going to then skip count. You have a 3, and then you have a 6, and then 9, and 12, and then 15. Now notice again how I went up 5 spots. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I am skip counting within the 5 sections. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the 4. We're going to skip count by 4s, and I'll go ahead and change the color so we don't get confused on what we're doing here. And we're going to skip count by 4s. So we have 4. Ooh, that might be hard to see. We have 4, 8, 12, 15, and 20. Okay, don't love that color. Let's quickly change to another color here. Now we're going to skip count by 6s. Help me out. Count out loud. We have 6. What comes next? 12. Good. 18. Keep it up. 24. And then 30. Now, looking at those numbers, which ones are the same in all three? It can't be the same just in 2. It has to be in all 3. When I look at them in all 3, I know that I have a 12 that's the same here, here, and here. So that becomes my common denominator. Okay? So if I take my fraction, 2/3, and I write it, and because of space, I'm going to write it right here. Okay? So I have 2/3. And I'm trying to figure out what's equal to 12. Come on. There it goes. So 3 times what equals 12? 4. Okay, so whatever you do on the bottom, you have to do on the top. What is 2 times 4 equal? 8. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and scroll up to give us more workspace here. Again, we are going to do this 1/4, and again, I'm going to go ahead and change the color here, and I'm going to use this orange, and I'm going to rewrite 1/4 right here. So 1/4, our common denominator is 12. 4 times what equals 12? 4 times 3. So whatever you do on the bottom, you have to do on the top. Okay, well, oops, go in here. What is 1 times 3? 3. Okay, so notice how we have 8/12, 3/12. Now we're having more of a common denominator, which is good news because we know that we have to have common denominators in order to be able to compare these numbers. The last one I'm going to do is 1/6. Okay, again, let me go ahead and scroll up a little bit, give us some space. I'm going to write 1/6 right here. Our common denominator is 12. So then 6 times what equals 12? 2. So whatever you do on the bottom, you have to do on the top. What's 1 times 2? 2. Okay, now it's time to compare all of these. Let's take a look and see which ones are the same. So I have common denominators. I have 12. So I'm going to look at the numerators. I have an 8. I have a 3. And I have a 2. Now the directions say from least to greatest. So then I know, again, let me move on up here, that 2/12, whoops, 2/12 is the smallest. The next number is my 3/12. And then the next number is 8/12. Now this is all great, except for when I wrote 2/12, what was the initial fraction that we started with? It was 1/6, wasn't it? Okay, so when we're listing these, when we have to list them from smallest to greatest, I'm actually going to list it using the initial fraction. So I'm going to do 1/6 here. Now, 3/12, that was represented with what fraction? 1/4, right? Okay, so we are going to write 1/4 instead, right here. And then last but not least, the 8/12 was represented by the 2/3. So that's what I'm going to write on my last one. I'm going to write 2/3. And that's how you would write your fractions from least to greatest. And then also remember that you are trying to also find which one was the greatest number. So you would go through and go, okay, well, which fraction was actually the greatest? You know that it's 2/3. And then if these fractions were the fractions that were written there, we figured out how to list them least to greatest. But those aren't the fractions listed there, so I'm not going to worry about that. But again, you have this worksheet to work out extra problems, but this is not what we are going to be looking at as far as completion. We're looking for your school city. So you need to log on to School City and do that after you watch all 3 videos. Thank you. Have a great day.